Hello everybody and welcome back to The Discerning Otaku, where today I'm once again going into one of my lists for basically an entire genre. This time I'm doing something a little bit different. We're going to do cute anime girls doing cute anime things. Now, while this might not be an entire genre and actually encompasses a whole bunch of different genres, I'm going to actually kind of pick and choose through what I'm doing. So there are a lot of different genres that would fall within this, such as the music genre with things like Love Live and things like that. But I'm going to hold off all those music-centric multimedia projects for a later video focusing solely on that. Now there are going to be some music-focused ones in here, but not so much those types. They're going to be more of ones that use the music as a side point and not the main focus. So without further ado, let's get into this list, and I'm actually going to start with the newest one on the newest show on this list, which is going to be Stardust Telepath. Now, I touched on this briefly as I was going through my tops, what I was checking out for this season, but it's basically about a lonely, shy girl named Umika who dreams about one day going to space and befriending aliens. Then one day she meets an unusual girl named Yu who claims to be an alien. Now, this one falls directly within the cute anime girls doing cute anime things. You have a lot of your stereotypes of the individual girls themselves. And it also kind of follows a lot of those tropes as well. But at the end of the day, the character designs are super adorable. Everything is written really, really well. You have your one girl who's too shy to really focus and speak to other people. And it's largely about the friendship that develops and actually expands out the friendship group. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of these shows do really well, is it kind of brings the introverted girl into a group where she can kind of expand, be herself, and learn and expand the friendships. So basically Stardust Telepath does that really, really well, and so far within the season they're, building little rockets with the friends and just trying to find ways to fulfill their dreams, which is another thing that kind of happens in a lot of these shows. So it's Stardust Telepath. Second here is probably going to be one of the more famous ones, also one of the newer ones on the list, and that's going to be Bocchi the Rock. Now, I can't really say much that hasn't already been said about this show. Basically, Hitori is going to be the main character here. She's an incredibly introverted guitar player, guitar hero, and basically she forms a band with Nijika on drums, who's going to be one of the more outgoing girls, Rio as the bassist, who's one of like the cloudy, just spacey girls, who's very, very funny, but always borrowing money from everybody, because all of her own money she spends on bass guitars. And then Kita, who's going to be the other guitarist, who Hitori ends up teaching the guitar throughout the first season. The show is absolutely phenomenal. The animation jumps around. They do a lot of different things, a lot of different animation styles, and really makes a unique show upon itself. But at the baseline, once again, it's cute anime girls doing cute anime things, and the character designs, the setups, the writing, and everything really pushes that aesthetic pretty cleanly in the show. It's done very, very well. I highly recommend to everybody, and if you're watching this video, you've probably already seen it, as it is going to be one of the most popular ones in this list. Moving on from there, we're going to go back a couple seasons to Do It Yourself, which kind of crept up. I don't think it got enough people noticing it. I know eventually it did kind of get some mention just due to the animation style being very unique and very well done. But basically the show is about Serafu, who is an eccentric girl who basically just lives in her own world. The world that she inhabits in real life is going to be more of a technologically advanced society where everything kind of bases around computers and drones and things like that, which is where her friend Miku comes into play. It's her childhood friend who is aggressively down to earth and is constantly telling Serafu just to get with the program and get with technology and things like that. But Serafu doesn't really have much interest in that. And she ends up joining the Do-It-Yourself Club, where they more or less just get together and build things with their hands. You know, they build a tree house, they make stained glass, they do a lot of different things. So once again, it's that cute anime girls doing cute anime things played out fully. All of the characters are incredibly likable, the animation's fantastic, character designs are very, very well done, and it is one that I think really goes to push a lot of what is coming into, like I said, it's not its own genre, but there are a lot of these shows recently that are kind of almost legitimizing it as a genre, and I think this one is a good example of that. Now the next one is going to be the most famous one on this list, 100%, and that's going to be K-On! The story of the Light Music Club, featuring Yui on guitar, Miyu on bass, Ritsu on drums, and Tsumugi on the keyboard, and it does eventually expand, but those are our first 4 members of the Light Music Club. Basically, the show starts off with Yui and Miyu trying to, not Yui and Miyu and Ritsu trying to form a fully fledged light music club so that they can keep hanging out in the club room, and trying to eventually convince Yui to join them, even though Yui has absolutely no training whatsoever in guitar, no training whatsoever doing vocals, nothing of the sort. And as the story progresses, they eventually pull in more people to fully form a band where they go on to perform. Like I said, this is going to be the most popular and the most well-known of all of these on this list, because it's been around for quite some time and has garnered quite a large following. But I do think this is one of the early examples of the cute anime girls doing cute anime things that you can really look into as to what kind of pushed the genre forward. And I do still think it's a prime example of what you can do with it as being almost a full-fledged genre. It is absolutely wonderful. I do recommend it to people. It is a little on the slower side, but that's what a lot of these are. You're not really watching these for action scenes or anything of that nature. You're watching these for a mood. The mood is usually something laid back. It's usually something like the version of comfort food. It's one of those things that it's very lighthearted. It's something that you're rooting for these. You don't lewd these girls. You root for them. They're cute, but they're not objects within that way. You truly want them to better themselves. You want their friendships to last. You want everything to go well for them. And I think that's a really positive viewpoint within this genre. Now, next up, we're actually going on to one of my absolute favorites, and that is going to be Laidbackcamp or Yuru Camp. Basically the story of a shy girl named Rin and an energetic Nadeshiko as they learn about camping and becoming friends. Now eventually it does bring in more characters and an outdoor club that Nadeshiko actually joins, and Rin is kind of there. But basically Rin has a big thing of getting together, by herself on the weekend, getting all of her stuff together, and going camping. That's basically the plot point of the entire show. And Nadeshiko becomes kind of infatuated with this, so much that she learns a lot about it as well. I binged most of the current content for this show, all the seasons, the movie, everything in a very quick succession. It was very soothing and calming for me. It was something, I'm not an outdoor person by any stretch, but by the end of it, I was sitting there looking at camping stuff on my phone going, oh, maybe, but realizing in the United States it's not particularly a good idea to go camping in a lot of places around here. But as far as the show goes, it's the prime example of the title of the video. It's just them doing things. It's them learning about camping. It's Rin teaching Nadeshiko the things that she needs to learn. It's Rin going on longer trips by herself to prove to herself that she can do it. It's Rin getting outside of her box and making friends due to Nadeshiko's help. and you know, this is probably the second most famous one on this list. So most people that are hearing me talk about this have probably already seen it, and that's great. I'm super happy about that, as I absolutely love this show. Um, but yeah, Laid Back Camp is definitely one of my favorites on this list. Next up is Let's Make a Mug 2. Now, there are 2 seasons of this. I've heard next to nobody talk about this, and it could be because the characters are not really the main focal point of the show so much as what the characters are doing. It's a series, obviously, as you can tell by the name, about making pottery. So we have a fairly decent sized character roster, so I'm not really going to get into it, but the main focus is just on the skill of making pottery itself, so much so that the show is actually split between about 12-minute animated episodes of one of the characters making some sort of pottery throughout the show, and then the second half of the show is actually a live action sequence with, I believe, the voice actors actually making pottery, learning about the things that were in the show in real life. The first season actually came out during COVID, and it's very apparent to see when they're actually doing the pottery. They're masked up. They have face shields on. So it was one of those that even with all that happening, there was a lot of love and attention put into the show and put into the love of pottery itself. So I do think that it deserves to be on this list for a lot of the things that it did, not focusing solely on the girls itself, but more focusing on the art of the craft that they were making and just having them do it. And it was very, very good. The animation's fantastic. The story, while light, does have some interesting parts to it. Moving on to Non Biyori. So this is one that I recently got into. Basically, it's a light-hearted story about a town called Asihigyoka. Basically, the story is Hotaru transfers in, and it's the story of how she makes friends with Renge, Natsumi, and Kumori in honestly one of the most laid-back shows I've ever seen. Mild note, Renge is probably the most adorable character I've ever seen. She's super duper cute. She walks around meowing all the time, and she tries to be cool like the grown-up girls and things like that. But it's so lighthearted. It's so sweet. Everything about it is just laid back as can be. It almost feels like you are in a rural town in Japan, just staring out the window and watching the world pass by slowly. It is a remarkable thing to be able to have a show that is seemingly about next to nothing and still be something worth watching. I think it gives an atmosphere, a mood, or a vibe, as they say, of just calming, just good-natured fun, just something that is very unique upon itself. Even amongst this list, I think it kind of pushes just the about nothing, but still something that these shows can do. And I highly recommend if you need something that is just very, very calm and laid back. Next up is going to be one that's slightly different. It does have a bit more focus on the story, and that's going to be Puraore, Pride of Orange. It's basically about a group of girls that want to start learning to play ice hockey. And it is about their journey, forming friendships, forming a team, and getting better when they start with literally nothing in a small rural town where there's not a whole lot to do. So they decide to start learning to play hockey. This is probably going to be one of the ones that is not going to appeal to everybody. I myself am not a sports person. It was a fairly lax season when this came on, so I added it to my list. And I didn't actually enjoy it. The girls are super cute. Their friendships with each other are very, very heartwarming. Seeing them push each other to be better is something that I really enjoy a lot about these shows, and this one does have that as a strength within it. And you can kind of see a lot of just a lot of the soul of the characters that was written, and the fact that they all had this dream that they wanted to attain. And so I think that one warrants it being put on this list. So that's why I did. Next up is Slowloop. When Hiyori's father passes away and her mother remarries, she moves in with their new family and her new sister Koharu. Um, Hiyori has a love of fishing due to that being an activity that her and her father did when she was a younger child. And so, in the same way as Rin from Laidbackcamp, she tends to keep to herself and to her hobbies, and she uses it as a thing to connect her to her deceased father. Whereas Koharu is more of an outgoing, energetic girl who, kind of in the way she acts, kind of pushes Hiyori away from her. But the story develops with them kind of creating this new sisterly bond and trying to find this thing that they can do together and in the ways that they can interact together to kind of become full-fledged sisters. And it's very heartwarming and very sweet. And seeing how they bond over something that might not be the thing that they both love, but they find ways around that to do that is something that's very heartwarming for me. And it was one that I really, when it came out, I was going through a lot of emotional things, and it really just kind of helped a lot. And I think it's one of those shows that has a way of, helping cope with going through certain things. So I definitely recommend Slowloop, and it's honestly usually recommended for people who like laid back camp as well, because it has a similar vibe to it. Moving on to another one that's going to kind of push the feels, as it were, is going to be Supercub. So I am not a motorcycle person. I am not a moped person. I like being inside a car where if I die, I'm wrapped in a little cage of metal that if I hit something, that's what happens. But this show got me due to my introverted nature, due to my dealing with depression, due to me being by myself a lot of the time. I related to Koguma quite a bit. So the story of Koguma, she doesn't have friends, she doesn't have a family. She leads a very solitary, depressed life where she just rides her bicycle to school every single day, does her studies, and goes home by herself. That is until one day she sees a little Honda Super Cub moped. And that is where the story begins. And the story progresses from there. The story is not, I don't want to say it's the background in this, but for me, this show largely became about her using this little super cub as a way for her to bond with other people in a way that she was never able to before. She met other people, she eventually, when she started, she only drove the Super Cub back and forth to work. Or not to work, to school, and she was very nervous about going further than one direction in any one way. So at one point she rides to the Combini and then back home, and the next day she goes a little bit further and back home. And that's where it starts for her on an adventure to better herself and to explore more. And from there she starts meeting other people also within the the hobby of scootering or what have you, within the vein of the show. And it shows her push through the things that she had issues before, and it shows her kind of better her life all in this one chance notice of this little scooter. And I think that's, seeing how she kind of overcame a lot of sadness, overcame a lot of depression, all on this one little thing that happened, is something that was very heartwarming to me. As cheesy as it sounds, it for me very much was a good show for me to watch when I was kind of feeling down in the dumps. It was something where I could look at it and go, okay, I can get through this. I didn't see a scooter, but it is, one of those things that you can latch onto and use that kind of emotional fortitude to move forward. Alright, finally, last up on this list is going to be another show about nothing. This one is the Order a Rabbit? Uh, this the title is very dumb and moderately misleading. Basically, Rabbit House is a quaint coffee shop ran by a group of middle school girls consisting of Cocoa, Chino, and Rize. The story begins when Cocoa moves to the big city, finds out that she's actually rooming at Rabbit House, and then finds out that Chino and Rize basically run the shop, although it's not owned by them. Um, and it's just about them becoming friends and having a coffee shop and trying to make the shop run better and becoming friends with other shops and becoming better friends with each other. That's what a lot of these shows, the main theme amongst most of these is becoming friends with each other and becoming better friends and breaking down boundaries and breaking down walls and things to that nature, which is why I enjoy so many of them. And that's all is the Order of Rabbit is. It's just a show about these girls becoming better friends. And it's a very heartwarming thing. And that's why I think I enjoy this genre as a whole. It's, you don't lewd them. You don't need people to be battling. You don't need shonen arcs in there. Most of these are just laid back slice of life shows where the main purpose is people just being friends, becoming better friends, overcoming weaknesses and things to that nature in such a way that feels more realistic, more down to earth. And I, for one, have really enjoyed a lot of that. But with that, I'm going to actually end this list. This video is quite a bit longer than what I usually do, so if anyone's made it this far, I'd greatly appreciate it. If you like what I'm doing, go ahead and subscribe. If you feel up to it, go ahead and leave a like down in the bottom down there, or leave a comment. If there's any other genres or lists you'd like me to do, go ahead and let me know. I greatly appreciate everyone who's watched any of these up to this point. And as per always, watch more anime, read more manga. You guys have a good one.